The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are.
I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is.
Don't think, feel. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
I'm Thomas Faustine Husking here again with Nick Gabriel, looking, jacked and somewhat tan, looking good in your tiger shirt.
You'd appreciate it.
Your question of the day, and I wrote this out because it's sort of a multi-parter. For somebody that travels so often, my question is, in what environment do you find the greatest peace? And what can you do to spend more time there?
I was actually going to ask you a very similar question, Thomas. Yeah, I was going to ask you what your happy place is on the planet. Man, it's strange. I like being high up. I like the I like the roofs of really high buildings. I like going up onto the top of a roof of a high building. Like, it doesn't even matter if there's a penthouse there or not, even if it's just a crappy roof. I just like being really high up. Mountains are another good one. I love being up on high mountains. And what was the second part? What can I do to do that more?
Yeah, well, first of all, before we go into that, that's sort of the follow-up. But why do you like to be high?
But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I feel that it puts everything into perspective. You know, there's a technique from a book. I read this book many years ago, which was, I cannot remember the title, but it proposed several solutions to stopping anxiety and stopping worry. And one of them was that you go and, let's say you enter into one of these loops of anxiety, or you're really concerned about something. The exercise was that you zoom out until you see yourself looking over at the top of your head, and then you zoom out further back, and then you see the top of the roof of the building that you're in, and then you zoom back out, and then you see the neighborhood. And you zoom back out and you see the city, and then you zoom back out and see the country, and then eventually the globe. And doing that exercise, it's an exercise in perspective, and it's designed to show you just how insignificant both you and your problems are. That's one of the cool things about being high up, is you just get this vision and this perspective, and realize. I was actually just in Thailand the other day, and I was in my hotel, and I was sitting, it had a really nice view. I was sitting against this big glass window and just looking out. This is something I wanted to tell you about for a while, actually. And there was a building under construction, a skyscraper under construction. And I just was watching the construction workers going about their little patterns, like bringing materials into the building and taking rubble away, and some of them were welding stuff, and it was just fantastic. And then I looked down and saw the pedestrians and the traffic, and it just was. I find this really powerful sense of peace, as you said, when I'm high up and looking out over things like that. And something I wanted to tell you, which I almost forgot about. I'm not gonna lie, I was under the influence of a substance when this happened, but sitting at that same window, and I had this epiphany that this is creation's best effort. That hit me, that line. I was like, this is its best effort. I was looking at the city of Bangkok, and I realized that it was imperfect, just like every other city is imperfect, and just like, to a large extent, parts of the natural world could be deemed imperfect. But that is the case with all living things, and everything in creation is progressing towards what it considers something better or an ideal, and that what we have right now, society and civilization and all the things that come with it, like pollution and crime and inequality, unfortunately these things exist, and just because they exist now doesn't mean they'll exist forever. And it could just be that our best effort at this point isn't good enough, but that as we keep going, after several iterations, eventually we could build a utopia. And I'm sure in certain universes and certain dimensions, after many successive iterations and best efforts, they have done so. And that ties into the conversation we had a few days or a few episodes back, in which you were speaking to me about what is my hope. And I guess it's all part of the same thing. It's my hope that, you know, my best effort and our society's best effort and the planet's best effort is going to lead to something fucking cool.
That's a beautiful sentiment, man. And you got that just by watching a bunch of workers file into a skyscraper? That's fantastic. Dude.
When you spend enough time on your own, bro, your mind comes up with some interesting things.
That's really great. Wow. Was that a psychedelic, or was that?
It was indeed. I was under the influence of a very small amount of LSD, which is something I've been experimenting with not too infrequently lately. The caveat being that anyone listening, especially if you're under 18, don't ever touch any of this stuff. Your brain is still forming. And
agreed.
Also, it's absolutely tiny amounts that I'm working with. I mean, it's like you've read the articles on microdosing. A lot of people are doing it at the moment. Obviously, be aware of the risks. I'm pretty sure it can trigger psychological illness if you're predisposed to it, and it's not an answer to your problems. Lately I've been very careful to frame everything I say about substances with those warnings, because there's some people out there that I'm sure will abuse these things and damage themselves unless otherwise.
Well, look, anytime you're talking about scale, there will be numbers in there who do dumb shit. So people, please, be super responsible. Don't hurt your brain by taking things too early, and don't overdo it if your brain is ready for it, because that's not what we're advocating here. So what kind of further insight are you getting out of microdosing? Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
what else you've benefited by with that protocol?
So about 2 episodes ago, we were speaking about, you opened the conversation with something to do with our own thought patterns and how it's good to get out of them. And the thing that I find about LSD is it forces you out of those patterns because it creates new ones. I mean, it's my understanding that one of the actions of LSD is it actually comes between existing neurological wirings. So if you have a neuron here that's wired to this neuron here, LSD comes between that wiring and forces a new wiring to take place. I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not a neuroscientist, but it kind of makes sense to me, because I don't know about you, Thomas, but I've seen many times my mind will just start looping thoughts, and not necessarily consistently or continuously, but I'll be walking down a street and I'll have a thought, and 3 or 4 days later I'll be walking down the same street and I'll have the exact same thought. The thing on that street will have triggered that little thought process. And the first few times that I identified that, I realized just how much of my thoughts are on autopilot, and how repetitive and boring and mundane they are, and how they could do with some shaking up, bro. And that's the thing I like about any experience, whether it's P1 LSD or whether it's I don't know, abseiling off the edge of a cliff, or going to a new culture, or trying to learn a new skill, or anything that breaks you out of those patterns. I think that's invaluable.
Totally agree. And you're
Yeah,
getting
and you're
so I'm sorry. So you're getting that to a certain extent, to a lesser extent, with that microdose, like frequently.
yeah. It's not even frequent, dude. It's every couple of weeks, I guess.
Okay.
It definitely jars you out of. You can't keep running through the same loops, dude. You just can't, because the chemical that's causing the change in the state and structure of your brain means that those loops are going to change, right? And here's the thing: sometimes they can change for the negative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens to people who have bad trips. Or it might be one of the explanations for bad trips is like, you might be having a loop about, oh, I've got to make more money, or I've got to focus on this, and that loop could be going over and over and over again through your mind. But then you take substance and it starts bringing up a loop about how, I don't know, I'm going to die one day and I'm not ready for it, or whatever that loop might be. Speaking of which, have you ever tried LSD?
Yeah, a long time ago in college, and I honestly have a terrible memory for the past. Now, mushrooms, different, I've taken quite a few times, but I appreciate psychedelics for that very thing that you're talking about. I honestly used to use cannabis in the same way. I was convinced that it allowed me to think differently from other people who, particularly in my early 20s when we were, finishing university and going into, some of us, corporate paths. Like I would see my dear friends from college going into very strict adult career paths, and I would smoke my bong and look at the water and play my music and be like, man, you guys are fucking crazy. You don't understand what the human experience is about. It's not about having stuff and wearing khakis. It's a lot like the Fight Club stuff. I think obviously there's a balance, but as I use cannabis a lot less these days, very, very infrequently, I still feel like it's important for me to jog my mind out of those thought patterns. And so for me, the newer sort of more sustainable, I don't think cannabis use is unsustainable, but for me at this moment in my life, the more sustainable route is a regular meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely see a huge benefit from doing that, and breathing exercises and eating good food, as more along the lines of making sure I don't fall into the patterns of conventional thinking. But I'm super open to ayahuasca. I'm looking forward to doing it this year in Peru. I'm definitely interested in taking LSD and mushrooms again with the right circumstances and the right people, or maybe no one. Oh, that was my other question. Do you end up doing the microdoses with people or by yourself? You sort of alluded to being by yourself a lot.
Most of the time it is by myself, but I have a couple of good friends who, if we do happen to be in the same location, we all have similar working habits, as in we work on our laptops from co-working spaces, and the three of us will very often sit down to work, and we'll all be on a microdose, and that's just fantastic.
Really?
Oh, dude, it's power.
Wow.
It's really good, yeah. I just, again, man, you're not going to find your salvation in a pill or a substance or a person or anything for that matter. It's within you, so I don't rely on any of these things. Like even though ayahuasca has helped me so much, far more than any other substance, I still know at the end of the day, like, it's down to me, right? It's not... There's a saying by the Buddha, which I absolutely loved. He says, nobody else can save you. No one can and no one may. And I think that applies to substances as well. I mean, I remember in my 20s, when I started smoking weed, I thought that was the answer to everything.
Smoke weed every day.
Yeah, and probably very similar to you. Like, oh, I'm having these amazing thoughts on these different vectors, and like, I'm thinking in new dimensions, and everyone else has got it wrong, and like, look at these stupid guys who are going into an office. And man, one of the understandings I've had, not too long ago actually, is that there are some incredibly fucking smart people who are going into offices every day and doing pretty fucking cool stuff and making very rational decisions. You know, it's not all just delusion and fear that causes someone to go work in an office. I can guarantee you there's dudes out there that are more actualized than you and I, who are going to work in an office every day wearing khakis, and they're probably having a lot more fun than you and I. They're doing really cool, interesting things that are helping to progress this planet and make everything better. To be fair, they are in the very, very small minority, but they do exist.
Sure. They must. They have to. Otherwise, what do we aspire for? You know,
yeah.
To. So
right.
I agree with you, but I don't think it's the majority. It's a tiny, tiny minority who are doing great things, who love what they're doing and going into that kind of structure. That being said, some people thrive on that. I can't stand the idea of having an overlord.
Fuck that, dude.
You know?
Fuck that noise.
And I've been there, so I know. And I'm like, I don't like you talking to me like that, but I will grin and bear it because I'm in South Korea or, you know, wherever my situation is. One time I worked as a video games tester for for a company that shall remain nameless in Austin, Texas, where they ported video games to Macs from PCs. And the environment, Nick, was just like probably the gates of hell. It was sort of, I had to stay in the dark next to serious gamers. I thought I was a gamer, just a gamer. Guys with like ponytails down to their butts who looked like unicorns, and they had sword collections. Those kind of gamers.
Fantastic.
Right. And so I was looking for bugs every day in games in the dark for like 8 to 10 hours, and just looking around at all these pale motherfuckers next to me who are just like really doing it. And I'm like, man. And then someone would come by every once in a while and be like, yeah, you're taking your bathroom breaks are a little bit too long, or, you know, make sure that you come back like after lunch. And it's just that kind of micromanaging stuff just makes me feel so constricted as a human. I'm like, I got to get out. I would rather be in the wilderness.
Dude, I've said it before and I'll say it again. 2 things. First off, I'd rather be dead. Right? I would rather be dead. And I think I'd probably be doing the world more service being dead than being micromanaged like that. And the second is something that a very smart friend of mine once said to me. He said, if, for whatever reason, knock on wood, if things fucked up and I lost everything and I was destitute and on the streets, I would go and take my chances in nature as opposed to the urban jungle. I'd just go find a forest or a jungle or something and give it a go and hunt some squirrels or whatever it is. And yeah, I'm kind of inclined to agree. Although it's easy to say that from the confines of this warm, well-heated room here in London.
That's right.
Yeah. I guess you're waiting for me to fill that silence. Thomas, my man. That's about as much introspection and challenging conversation as my brain can take for one day. For those of you who don't know, we film these episodes back to back in batches of 2 to 4. That's just the third one for today. And Thomas has, as usual, hit me with shots from all over and squeezed my brain. I really appreciate it, Thomas. I always leave these conversations, as I say, it's just cathartic, man. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
You're very welcome, and likewise. And actually, when you get back stateside, we will, for those out there that actually watch, I know it's a smaller number than listen to the audio because it's way easier to listen to a podcast. But should you be one of the few that watches this, we will definitely record a proper episode where we're in the same room together with proper mics and all that. When you are back stateside, so we'll keep you posted.
I'm looking forward to that. In the meanwhile, please leave a review on iTunes, preferably a 5-star review, and share on social media where you can. And also, we have Instagram now. My fiance is running our Instagram account, and she's doing an amazing job. She's putting some really cool stuff up there. It's at Digital Communion. And thanks again for all your support, guys.
That's right, you heard fiance, motherfucker. Sorry, ladies. Great show, Nick. See you next time.
Okay, my brother. Keep the faith.